Welcome, everybody. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming to the student panel. This panel is part of our regularly scheduled meeting, so we do have just a couple of logistics to address before we start and hear from our students. So I'm going to officially call the meeting to order at 3:09. Can someone lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, do we have to stand?
How about you, James? Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any public comment? All right, and so I'll call for approval of minutes from September 25th if I do not hear any objections. All right, hearing none. The minutes from September 25th are approved. Okay, so the idea for this student panel came from the professional development director from Mount San Antonio College. She does this student panel every year with her new faculty, and they love it. It's a really awesome opportunity to hear from students and then provide some immediate feedback to some of the issues that they've been hearing from their students. And so we thought that this was kind of timely to have this for a number of reasons. This semester we had a lot of students drop. And so the college as a whole is really interested in gathering data about why that is. And so this is kind of anecdotal, but this is more the affective sort of reasons why students drop, whereas our institutional effectiveness office is going to be looking at longer or wider data trends across the college as well. So we're hoping that we'll tackle this problem from multiple angles to try to really get at how to help our students. Another reason that we wanted to have this panel is because we're having a conversation about institutional effectiveness indicators in the Senate right now. These are 1 year and 6 year goals that the Chancellor's office is asking us to make with respect to a bunch of different college success indicators. So course completion is one of them, median time to degree, certificate completion. Faculty are expected to make these goals, and that's really, really hard to do if we haven't thoroughly vetted the data and understand the scope of the problem. So in an effort to increase more faculty participation in these numbers, we thought that we needed to spend time in Senate to look at them. And of course, the primary reason is to hear from our students and help them to succeed, right? Making the decision to drop is a real important one for students. If they drop at the wrong time in the semester, that goes on their record. If they drop a class that's a prereq or in a series of courses, it could totally derail their academic progress. And so I think it's really important as faculty, if we can do some small tweaks and changes in our classroom to help increase course completion, we should do that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the process. I basically followed what the PD director at Mount SAC did. She recruited students by putting a call out to faculty and campus colleagues who worked with students intimately. I did this, but I also emailed the 800 students who dropped in the first 2 weeks. I sent a blanket email. As you can imagine, I got poor response rate, right? This is a high-stakes situation, and coming from a complete stranger, I didn't get a whole lot of interest. But the combo, these emails started coming in, and as I heard from students, I arranged meetings, interviews with each one of them. So I spent about 30 minutes to 1 hour hearing their stories and unpacking their experiences and preparing them for today. So it's random recruitment in the sense that I didn't go and recruit students from particular courses or from particular faculty, right? But I think it's non-random in the sense that we have 5 incredibly brave students up here. So yes, please, let's give them a round of applause. Yeah, so I ensured them that people here today would be fully supportive of this panel and really did want to hear from them. So I hope that you all feel safe and supported. Thank you. So after we did the interviews, again, I tried to explain what was going to happen today, made sure that each one of them felt safe and secure. I hope they still do. And then my second priority was to make sure this is a positive learning experience for faculty. So the idea isn't to call any individual out or make anyone feel defensive. The themes that came out are common and across the board. And so hopefully we can respond to them in a positive way and come up with solutions for them. Thank you. So we're just going to go through and have each of the students introduce themselves. Then I have some pointed questions that will allow them to tell their stories. We'll turn it on the audience and have you guys discuss some solutions to what you've heard. And then if we have time, we'll do a question and answer session. So do keep in mind, if we get to the question and answer session, just be aware of how you phrase your questions or how you phrase your comments so the students feel supported throughout this process. All right. Okay. So our first student is Amaris. Do you want to tell them a little bit about how long you've been at PCC?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Amaris Jacobs. I am a non-traditional student, so I have been off and on of this campus since 2012. Prior to my community college experience, I attended several schools, so I've gone through 1 through 6 schools from elementary to high school. So this is my only consistent base as far as college education.
And Amaris will tell us, she's not talking specifically about dropping a class, she's talking more in general about observations she's made in several of her classes and about her peers. And Frankie?
Hi all, my name's Frankie Castro. I'm a second year here at PCC. My major is chemistry. Prior to coming to PCC though, I did attend a few other community colleges. Before that I was on a 2-year break from school, and before that I actually went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for a year. But all of that led me here to PCC. And today I'll be talking about one class here that I dropped before the W deadline.
Chris?
Yes. Hi, my name is Chris. This is my third year. This is my 3rd year here at PCC. I came here directly from high school out of 2015. This is my first and only college experience so far in my academic career.
Thank you. Judy?
Hi, I'm Judy. I graduated high school in 2015. Right out of high school, I went to Cal State LA for a quarter, and then I came here in the spring of 2016.
And Judy will be talking about a class that she's did not drop, but kind of dreamt that she could drop. Alexis?
Hello, my name is Alexis Mcgowan, and I'm a non-traditional student. I attended PCC last year, but I had to drop out due to my health reasons. I also attended Chaffey College to try out because I wasn't really happy with the way things were going at Pasadena City College. I will be talking about a class that I wanted to drop, and thank you for coming.
Alrighty, so we'll get to the question. So the first question is describe 2 to 3 observations that you've made about your instructor or the classroom environment that influenced your decision to drop or gave you feelings that you might want to drop the course. What message do these observations send to you about your ability to learn, succeed, grow, or thrive in this environment? Amaris?
Okay. As far as dropping, I have dropped some courses. I think when it comes to the institution, there is a lack of consciousness in terms of intercultural communication and the different cultural backgrounds that we each come from. I'm noticing that times in our generation is changing, so the way that we are communicating with each other as student and instructor is causing sometimes a bit of a strain. Also, I would say that something that concerns me and many of us is neurological diversity, which I know is oftentimes really referred to with autism, but I think a lot of us actually have very different ways of learning, and we have a lot of different preferences, and I think that our educators should take on a responsibility on realizing how we can challenge those students, but challenging them in the best interests of them succeeding overall from the larger scale of the course, which is transferring out and actually getting a degree.
Thank you. Frankie?
So in the class that I'm keeping in mind in particular, I came in after reading Rate My Professor and was a little worried because of the low ratings, but I always took that with a grain of salt. But going in, I immediately noticed that there was a kind of lack of structure to the course. The professor preferred to have students work in groups, which I do think that could be productive. However, there was a lack of a foundation. There wasn't very much instruction from the professor himself. Also, communicating with the professor was a little difficult. Me and my fellow students would go up to him with questions and concerns, and the professor would kind of turn us back into our group settings to resolve that issues among ourselves. And that made me and my fellow students also feel fairly frustrated and a little lost going through the course. In the end, though, I had to decide whether or not I wanted to stay in the class. I decided that I didn't feel as though I would enjoy learning in the class if I felt as though I had to struggle to keep up with all the material, so I ended up dropping.
Thank you. Chris?
So for me, it boils down to a couple of reasons and a couple of scenarios that I lived through. One of them is homework load, and this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for that particular class, in addition to a couple other concerns. Essentially, the homework load was the hurdle that really affected my ability to learn. I felt like I know that practice is important, but having to do lots of homework when you're starting out and not really understanding what it is you're supposed to do is a burden, and it put a lot of load on me. Essentially, what happened was that I was so bent on finishing the homework and trying to get it in on time that absorption of the material and understanding of the material was out of the picture. This is not to say that I don't like doing work or I don't like doing homework, but that I value the quality of the time spent rather than the quantity of the time spent. Another issue that I want to bring up is that I feel that sometimes some classes, and I think Frankie has addressed this, can be sometimes too free form, where there's no structure. It just seems kind of liquid and fluid, and whatever the day or which way the wind blows is the way that we're going to take class today. I'm more of a person that likes structure. I like things broken down. I like the curriculum broken down into paragraphs or sections so that I can digest it easier. And this was something that I didn't find. An example of this was that the teacher would have a PowerPoint at the beginning for the class. This was the lecture, and this was the base of which the lecture was, going to be on. And so what would happen is that he would have 1 or 2 lines of words on a PowerPoint, but then he would fill up 2 whiteboard full of notes and materials and things we have to understand, and I couldn't follow that. He tried to alleviate this by printing out the slides for us and making us take notes on them, but what would happen is that I couldn't connect those concepts together and ended up with a spaghetti of arrows on my paper that wasn't very helpful to me. Another concern I want to bring up is and this is kind of the big one, and this is in particular has to do with my weakness in math, is that I just can't find, or in my experience so far, and all the teachers and professors that I've taken class with, there's not really a chance for experiential learning or accommodations for experiential learners such as me. I would sit in class and the teacher would give us example after example, but I couldn't feel the air to breathe because I needed an example to work on by myself. This is how I've learned so many other things in my life, and in particular a couple of subjects that I've found success in, is that I need to tinker with it. I need to knead the dough. I need to interact with the material and not just sit there and listen to a lecture the entire time. In an instance where the math teacher would go ahead and give us an opportunity and present us with a problem to do an example, he would maybe give us only 5 minutes, and that's not even enough time to write down the problem or comprehend what the problem is asking in the first place. So that's pretty much the long and short of it. I know I have a lot to say, but of course, if you have any concerns, I can address them later. So
Thank you, Chris. Judy?
Well, this particular professor, I like to think I know him pretty well because I've taken him, this is my 3rd time. Not because I keep repeating the class necessarily, but because he teaches a number of different courses in my major. So I know what he's like pretty well, and some of the problems with his class that I don't really like are like I find myself struggling to try to work hard in the class because, for one thing, he doesn't read the homework or like give me feedback on the answers, so I feel like what's the point of trying to get the right answer? Another thing is I would find that people would be answering questions and he would be cutting them off and kind of making fun of them in their answers, and I didn't really feel comfortable speaking in the class because of that and participating. And he also, I feel like he didn't really have the time for the class also because he had a number of like side occupations, and so I felt like he was preoccupied with those. Like teaching wasn't his only occupation, and he was always canceling class because of that, and so because of that, we were missing out on some of the material. And it wasn't like one class per semester. It was like, I think the first time I took him, it was like 3 classes he canceled. And it was a weekly class. So I found that I was missing out on a lot of material because of that.
Thank you, Judy. Alexis?
My first observation about my teacher was that she didn't keep her word. The first day of school, she went through things that were on her syllabus. Then as days went on, she started adding all these rules that weren't on the syllabus, nor she discussed. She goes, well, today I thought of doing this. And it was like, well, why didn't you just discuss it with us, first day of school, or maybe put that in syllabus so we don't? And I learned that I couldn't trust her word because one day she would say this, the next day she would say that. Another thing I learned was that she's very cocky. She said to pass her class, you would have to study 9 hours a week or you automatically fail. And I immediately thought, there's no way I could do 9 hours just for one class, just imagine what I have to do for my other classes. And she started going on about you had to have a study method. And she said it takes years to learn. She said you can't just learn it in a few weeks or so. But there's scientific facts that it can take 90 to 60 days to build a new habit. So I was kind of like, well, I don't know, was she trying to scare us? But it worked for me. Another thing is, I'm a DSP student, and she didn't follow the rules about test accommodations. It says it takes 5 days, and just 2 days, she'll be like, oh, you have a test you have a test Thursday. And that was only 2 days. And when I submit with DSP, they'll be like, why did you not, submit it a week ago? And I was like, she didn't give it to me a week ago, she just told me 2 days ago. And DSP, they know her. When I said her name, they were like, oh yeah, she's not a big fan of us. And I felt like she should follow the rules, especially for a DSP student. I can't just drop any time and be like, well, this is, I have a test, let me do it. And I felt like she should have followed the rules. And I don't think that she really cared about the rules much, but I felt like as a teacher, it should be enforced that we follow DSP rules. I think that's very important.
Thank you. So this is the first time the students have heard each other's stories, and I saw expressions go across as you were listening to each other. Is there anything else you want to add before we turn it over to the audience? And I know my second follow-up question was going to be, did you discuss the concerns that you had with your faculty? And some of you touched upon whether you did that and why not. But if any of you want to add anything to that effect or have anything else you want to share, it's your opportunity. Maurice?
Sure. I'm definitely an interactive student. Like, I don't do very well as far as like public speaking, but I like going to my professors and speaking to them and explaining my situation. I think that's very important, but it also needs to be a very welcoming environment. Like, I can't just trust anybody who I go to. I need to, first of all, as soon as I'm in the classroom, I need to feel, does this professor have my best interest, first of all? And the professors who are my mentors and who are in my life, they've really built me up, and it's about them having witnessed a potential in me, and that's something that I really appreciate from all of them, because I just feel like a lot of times during my college career, like, I've very much been bypassed, and I need someone to, even if they see like that little light in me, to really nurture it, because that's where you're able to just completely grab like the whole like aspect of who I am, and it makes me become a lot more of a hard worker for that person because it's like this trust and bond and loyalty. For instance, right now I'm retaking my statistics course because just like Chris, I also struggle with math to the point where my admission has been for UC Riverside and Irvine was canceled because I'm retaking statistics because it's something that I struggle with, and I do seek out my resources. But right now I have a great professor. She is Asian American and she has a language barrier, and I spoke with her and I see that she travels from Cal State LA to class, sweaty, needs to have a seat, she's breathing heavy. She goes to several colleges, and when I see that in my professor, it makes me want to work hard for them. I need to be enlightened of my professor as well. Just how our professors need to be humanized on our perspective, I need my professor to humanize themselves as well and like kind of enlighten me what their background is going on. That way it just makes me want to keep going. So she hasn't missed class, therefore I'm not missing class because she's coming in sweating, breathing hard. So it makes me want to work just as hard for her. My other speech professor as well, she just happened to be in Vegas, the incident of the shooting. She was there Monday morning. She looked shook. She looked a mess, like respectfully. She just looked shook, like she needed a personal moment. But she still came into class and she still hasn't canceled. So I'm still there too. So it's just like having those little conversations of just like, you know, give me your story as well. That way I'm willing to share my story with you. And then it becomes a collaborative effort because ultimately it's teamwork, student and professor. I want to succeed as much as my professor wants me to succeed in their course.
Chris?
To put a finer point on some of the things that I talked about, you know, that analogy of I can't feel the air to breathe in terms of getting an example done in class. I feel like for me especially is that it's like a Polaroid picture. You have to take the picture right then and there, and then you get it printed out and you have it in your hands. But if you don't get that moment in time, I find that I struggle in terms of understanding the work and understanding the material I have to complete in that class. In addition to the homework question, to the homework concern about the homework load, I found that what happened is that I would turn in the homework, but I wouldn't feel very confident in terms of understanding it. So what I would have to do is kind of backtrack right before the test and review select questions from the homework and try to do them over again by myself. So essentially doing double work to try to understand the material right before the test and to help me study. But with that, I think I want to open up the questions.
Okay. So the idea now is to shift into having a discussion, so with your neighbor or the people around you, identify some of the issues that you've heard, whether they speak to you directly or there's just some interesting feature of what the students have said that you feel like you want to tackle. And have a discussion about what are some things that we can do in the class, some changes that we can make that would help to address some of these issues. As you heard, I think there's a wide range of issues. A lot of them are non-cognitive, right? They're the affective side of our classrooms. And oftentimes, we don't think about that. I just want to share, be a little vulnerable before I ask you to be vulnerable. As I was listening to these students, you know, Amory said something where she said, you know, I really appreciate my students being hard asses, but they need to do it with some love. And that really spoke to me because I'm a hard ass teacher, right? And you know, for a long time, my students would really have a difficult time with my class, and I couldn't understand why. You know, I set the bar, I felt like I was giving them support, and what I didn't realize is I wasn't showing them what I had in my heart. I felt like I was there to support them. I felt like I wanted them to succeed, but somehow that wasn't getting translated to them. And I've learned that, like, from some of our colleagues who have these workshops on non-cognitive factors in the affective domain, and I've realized that I have to be very deliberate in what I say to my students and be very deliberate in how I interact with them and welcome them into the class. And I have been practicing that. I've got a long way to go, but I can already tell that it makes a huge difference. So I'm just going to have Sheila transition here.
So we would love for you to have a conversation with your colleagues about some of the things that we can do to address some of the topics that our students have shared with us. One of our senators who has deep expertise in teaching and learning and has a background in education has put together some materials on affective domain and the research, the educational research behind it. So we're going to pass those out. And that senator also has additional materials that we can share in a follow-up email. So as Valerie passes those out, if you would like to turn to your neighbors and start to debrief some of the things that we've heard and start to brainstorm some of the ideas about how we can address them.
I think as I do it, I'm more comfortable.
Yes, I can see that. I think you're getting strength from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear some highlights from your conversations. Or any questions also.
Well, thank you guys very much, by the way. This is very informative to us, and I know it's a really difficult thing to stand up in front of faculty and do this, so thanks again for that. But one of the things we were discussing right here at the end was a way that we might inform students about different pedagogical styles. You were mentioning neurodiversity, and some of you were uncomfortable in different types of classrooms. It might be useful for us to come up with a way to communicate that to you ahead of time, so you can make an informed decision. Like, oh, this is a teamwork, kind of class. This is a hands-on class. This is a just traditional class. So you could make that informed. So we thought that might be a useful thing to do.
Do you have any comments, quick comments about that?
May I?
Yeah, Frankie.
So I think that's a really great thing to mention at the beginning of the course, maybe in the syllabus, like how your teaching is based, because I feel like some people are geared towards a certain type of teaching and they don't know that within the first couple of weeks. And then after that second week mark, it's too late for them to drop, or if they do, it's with the W. So I think that might be very informative for.
How about even noting that in the schedule of classes?
Yeah, I think that's also great.
So that being said, also maybe we can also try to use more diverse ways of teaching, and I know we all have ways that we like, that we're used to, that we find most appropriate, but maybe using diverse teachings, or trying to teach in different modes for different learning types, that can also expand.
Anyone else? Bevel?
Yes, I also want to say that you all are very brave coming here and having this discussion. My question is more to Judy specifically. I know you said that you went to Cal State LA and left pretty soon. As a faculty member who also teaches at Cal State LA, this is very concerning to me as a four-year institution that you would leave. So my first question is why, if you can give us some of the reasons why you left, and also if you remember taking the Introduction to Higher Education course, because that course was designed at Cal State LA to keep first-year students interested in college and to keep them going. So, thank you.
Well, I actually liked it at Cal State LA. I didn't really leave because I didn't like it, or I didn't like the teachers or anything. It was mostly just because I kind of changed what I wanted to major in. I decided I wanted to get a paralegal degree, and I'm a double major, and that's one of my majors here. And they didn't have it at Cal State LA, I think, or I think they might have a certificate, but not an AS. And so I decided I wanted to go for the AS. So I came here mostly just because of my major. Yeah, I did. And I remember I took it, I felt do you want my opinion on it?
Yes.
I remember I took it, I felt like it wasn't something I needed. I know that it does help a lot of people, but because my high school, I think, did a really good job at preparing me. So I kind of just breezed through it, because I remember there was a lot of discussions about how to write essays and stuff like that, and I don't think I needed that, because I got a really good education in high school.
Thank you.
Yeah.
you. Anyone else want to share?
I'm going to echo what people said. Thank you for doing this. This is amazing. We really appreciate it. The two stories that touched me the most were Frankie's and Chris's, and I have questions related to that, if you don't mind. We were talking about innovative teaching approaches, and Frankie, it sounds like what was happening in your class was that there was an innovative teaching approach being attempted, and I related to a lot of the things that it sounded like the professor was doing, but then, you know, there could be very minute differences that, you know, maybe it works better in one class than another or something. So I wanted, if you don't mind, if you could brainstorm with me. What could someone, an instructor who has a more innovative approach, do to, if they want to encourage things like productive struggle, like making you try to figure stuff out together, like what could they do to still do that but still make you feel supported? That's one question. Then I have something different for Chris, if I may, after that.
So in the course that I was in, the professor kind of just threw us into groups, and we had to figure how to get from point A to point B without any of this knowledge in between. And so in that position, I felt like it was very difficult for me to work with my fellow students because we were all basically in the same boat where we don't have this foundational knowledge that we need to go from point A to point B. In that case, I feel like the professor should have done a little more instruction on like the material we were covering, and then kind of put us into group work, see how that worked. I also noticed in that class that the professor didn't really attempt to go to all the different groups and see how everyone was doing. I felt as though you had to go and approach him for some help, and it was a little intimidating because if you went individually, he'd turn you back. You would have to go as a group, but by then you're already kind of dumbstruck a little bit.
So what I'm hearing is if you give, maybe accessing some prior knowledge, having a common knowledge base to start from, and then using that to springboard into something group related, and then the instructor going around actively and visiting each group rather than making the students come to them would be helpful. Okay, that makes tons of sense. Thank you for brainstorming with me on that. So, and Chris, the homework load thing. I don't know. I don't have a well-formed question about that, but I feel like I give a lot of homework, and I wonder sometimes if my students are, you know, being discouraged by it. So I wonder, do you think that there's a point where sounds like maybe there was too much work, like, but then there's a lot of demands on what needs to be practiced and covered. So I'm trying to figure out how can an instructor give a lot of work without discouraging students, or I don't know. I don't know what question to ask, but your story, I related to it too, and I wanted to hear more if you could.
So I think this is it's kind of a difficult question to answer, but what it is it's just a matter of calibrating because you know, stuff still has to get done and curriculum still has to get taught nevertheless, but you know, maybe, I don't know, I guess maybe a good way to do it is you know, this analytic statistical approach. You know, if more students are turning in stuff and the students who aren't turning in stuff, you get their feedback on it, I think that would be extremely helpful. It's just a matter of opening up and reaching out like you are, and you know, having an open mind about it, because my experience with that particular class was, you know, I don't want to assume anything, but you know, math people and science people are more, this is A plus B equals C, and this is the way it's been for 1,000 years, and they're more rigorous in that way. But you know, being more flexible and being more open to feedback and calibrating, and instead of having such a rigorous, you know, this is how it's done and this is always the way it's been done, is a good mindset to have for that.
Okay, thank you. So we've discussed a few pedagogical issues and changes we might make. Did anyone talk about the affective side, any non-cognitive factors, solutions to those? We did hear a couple of students voice those opinions about inclusivity and feeling valued and heard.
Yes, unfortunately, I missed a lot of the student panel. I'm very sorry that I got here late. But one thing that I did think about was I noticed sometimes that students seem reluctant to come to conference hours. And it just occurred to me that it might be a good idea for me to establish a time when students must come in for some kind of a one-on-one conversation. I think that just being able to have that connection with your students, a personal connection, really breaks down a lot of the barriers, you know, especially if they're having some problems with some, you know, some courses or some issues, or just to be able to talk and have a conversation and really connect with the human side of, you know, the student and the teacher, I think is really important. And so that just, it seems like something that maybe that I will initiate from now on.
Judy, do you want to just share the positive experience you had that's related to that?
Yeah. So, one of the questions related to that kind of, I was going to talk about how, because, you know, like my whole life I've been in like classes where it's like 30, 40, or like even 50 people, and so it's really hard to like, you know, like to feel like I have a section of like the teacher's time, and it's not the teacher's fault, you know, like overcrowding like really isn't their fault, but I really like, I appreciate it when a teacher can give one-on-one feedback and can, you know, just have a discussion with the student. Like I have a teacher like that, and it really like, knowing that he's given me like one-on-one time and that he's like, gives me feedback and stuff, that really helps me like feel the need to participate in the class. And so I really like that about teachers when they do one-on-one.
So can we end on that note? Can I hear from each of you describe some practices, behaviors, observations that have inspired you to be your best, to show up, to work hard, to be engaged in your classes?
Okay, well, for me, I am a student who has gone to several elementaries and middle schools, and I think that sometimes as professors we forget the students' background, and we like to treat them all very much in like an equal playing field, which is great sometimes, but I think we need to be a little bit more open to understanding that a lot of us are coming here to community college for a fresh start, to rebuild ourselves, to reestablish, to regain opportunities, and that's definitely something that I'm doing. My background is I come from a single mother household, so she's doing her best to provide me a certain lifestyle. So I'm coming back to college in order to also have that mobility in like the social hierarchy. Some of the best ways that I've been able to succeed is actually Miss Banks. She talks about office hours, but she's one of those people who's definitely like my backbone as well. It takes a village to get to where you are, and it's just about really being willing to actually open yourself up to the student. I know that this sir mentioned that we as students should go to the professor, but sometimes I think that the professor needs to reach out to the student, because students are shy. Students have a lot of chaos in their world. I have a lot of friends who have also dropped out of college just because of their own personal experiences. I have my own personal load and experiences as well, which just creates me of wanting to drop out of college. But when you have that support and those people that genuinely love and care for you, it makes you want to keep going. Like, it's almost, there's those moments where you want to drop out of college, but then you know that you have people in the institution who are rooting for you. So you come back and you do it for yourself, but then you also do it because you know the work and effort that those people have put in for you. So it's all about teamwork. Like, it's about opening up yourself to that student and being a lot more compassionate. What I'm noticing is a lack of compassion in the institution. Yes, challenge your student, make them work hard, but do it in a loving manner and raise your student up, because we are the future. So if if you're not raising us up, then what are you doing? We're like, you know, it's about a bigger picture. The coursework and all of that is great, but how far do you want this to go outside of this institution? So that's what I have to say. So thank you, Ms. Banks, for always providing a safe space.
Frankie?
So some parting words, I guess, is to kind of take on the perspective of your student. Don't, as Amory said, kind of unify all of them, because we all have different cultures, different backgrounds, different age ranges even in a community college. And I feel like it's so important to interact one-on-one with your students and to encourage them to participate more and to also be adaptive to how the class as a whole is functioning. So if people are lacking in a certain aspect of the class, maybe focus a little bit more on that and like just adapt your way of teaching as you progress. Thank you.
Chris?
So the main theme to my answer here is empathy and not assuming bad intent. I mean, there must be a reason or sacrifices that of why you as teachers are here. I mean, it's certainly not for the pay, right? I mean, so some of my professors have shown this. They have made the effort to reach out to help students, because I feel that, I don't know what the exact number is, but in a class, let's say 90% is the student's responsibility, but I think maybe that 10% is the key, and that 10% is the professor as well. I'll give you a couple examples of how a couple of professors have touched me in my life. I took a counseling class, and this class was my first semester of college. I was struggling with debating whether I should drop with a W or not, and I talked it through with the professor. He gave me some life experiences that he'd had in dropping classes, and I think that really helped me solidify my decision. In addition, this was when I was trying to find employment as a college student, and he helped me with my resume. He went ahead and made edits. He went ahead and helped me, correct a couple of things. It just made such an impact on me. I kept the copy just all these years in my computer. Not only that, but the fact that this other professor, who is a science teacher, he made the effort to go ahead and be friendly involved with the students and go ahead and joke around with some of them. And this human side of it really, I think, rubs off students in the right way. And this professor particularly also worked at JPL, so not only did he communicate with students in the class, but he was made accessible outside of class. And the apex of this was him inviting us to his workplace, which is JPL, to take a tour. And the jobs that you have, the day jobs that you have, if you do have one, or the life experiences that you have down the line are very valuable to students. And I think living here in LA, we have such a great opportunity. I had an art teacher that works in the art district in downtown, and that's kind of the artist enclave of this whole state. At the same time, we have some of the smartest people in the nation here from JPL and Caltech, and I've experienced that side of that. And really to conclude, what I would say is, of course, it's that empathy and not assuming bad intent. I used to have a very defeatist, very cynical attitude about class if I didn't do well, that it was my fault and that it was my responsibility. But now in these couple semesters, I've began to advocate for myself, and this is kind of an example of that, although indirectly, and really reach out and try to reach my professors and reach them and talk to them about my troubles and what I've experienced in the past, so that they can understand where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Chris. Judy, do you want to make any concluding remarks?
So, like I said, I really value one-on-one and feedback, because then I see it as I don't mind working hard for a teacher and for a class if I see that they're willing to give me their time too in exchange. I appreciate it when a teacher can, give me personalized feedback and will listen to me.
Thank you. Alexis?
I think culture understanding is the most important thing. One of my teachers allows the other students to use the N-word in class, and it bugs me. It's in the book, but they can speak it freely, they can write it freely and everything. And I remember when the kids saying it, I just wanted to be like, don't say it. But I didn't want to be the only one who had a problem with it. And another thing that bugged me was when I came to her office hours, she claimed that this was her free time, that she had a lot of things to do, and she's trying to help out PCC students. And I'm sitting there like, well, I'm a student, you can't help me out. And then if I email her, she'll be like, it's in the book. And I remember, not feeling comfortable enough to ask in class, because she would always say, ask someone else. And I was like, if I asked someone else and they knew the answer, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be in this class. And it was really annoying. She would even check my homework, mark it with a 10, but wouldn't tell me if I got it right, wouldn't tell me if I got it wrong. She just marked it, and that was it.
Alexis, is there a positive experience that you
Oh,
hopefully had at PCC that you can leave us with?
My positive experience is Brian Adler.
Oh, wait, no names, please.
Oh, he's an amazing professor. I had him last year before I dropped out due to health reasons, and he was positive. He gave good feedback, but most important, if you needed anything, he'll be right there. You could email him, you could talk to him. He'll say, I'll be, here after class for 10 minutes, come talk to me. He had no problem, and he made sure he had time for every student. And I remember I had a problem with kids in my group. They didn't want to talk to me, and they were just with each other because they were all friends. And I couldn't get anything in. And he saw me, and he came up to me and started talking to me, and he makes sure, everyone's included. He'll go to all the groups and make sure everyone got their answers in, everyone got work done. And I remember thinking, this is a pretty cool dude. And another thing is that he's very open-minded, but he doesn't speak over people. He wants to hear everyone's experience and wants to make sure everyone's heard. So I tell people when they ask, how would you describe him? What would you say about him? And I tell everyone he's the cool white dude who has your back. So that's how I would describe him. So yeah, I had a very positive experience with Adler. He's amazing.
Thank you. So that's all the time we have. I mean, this could be a 2 to 3 hour workshop, and it would be wonderful. So thank you. Please, if you have any follow-up ideas for additional professional development, any ideas for sharing out into your respective departments or divisions, please share, please offer them up. Sheila mentioned a resource that will be sent to you. It's fairly detailed, really specific ways to change your class up to address some of these issues. Talking about the first day of class and how oftentimes we let our students leave early. You can use that to set a foundation and a tone and address some of these things. So do you have any concluding remarks?
I just want to thank the students for your incredible
Thank you.
honesty and bravery. You were amazing. Thank you so much. And for Valerie for all of her hard work setting this opportunity up.
Okay, well, thanks again for coming. We have our regular Senate meeting now. You're welcome to stay for that. I can't guarantee it'll be as interesting as listening to our delightful students. What?